In the black silence of deep space, the warship Titan's Wrath broke through orbit and came to a slow, steady halt above the glowing planet of Helion 9. The ship was massive, a floating fortress made of black alloy, armed with weapons few in the galaxy had even seen. Its hull shimmered faintly in the star's light, a cold reflection of Earth's growing dominance. Inside the command deck, Captain Jack Voss stood at the wide viewing window, hands behind his back. His uniform was sharp, his face calm, but behind his steady eyes, thoughts turned. He had seen a dozen planets fall. He had watched enemy ships burn, yet something about this mission felt different. "Status report," he said, his voice firm but not loud. "Orbit locked," replied Commander Elena Hargrove, his second in command. "No resistance. Helion 9's surface defense systems are cold." Jack nodded. "Good. Maintain orbit. Await further orders." He turned from the window and walked across the deck. Crew members worked at their consoles in silence. They were the best Earth had, disciplined, efficient, unquestioning. A soft chime echoed across the deck, a message from Earth High Command. Jack stepped into the private comms room and activated the encrypted line. The screen flickered to life, revealing a cold, steel-faced admiral. "Captain Voss," the admiral said, "you are to hold position over Helion 9. The Helion system holds high-value energy crystals. We believe local alien alliances may resist our claim. You are authorized to show force if necessary." Jack's jaw tightened. "Understood, sir. Earth's strength must be clear. We cannot allow hesitation. The Titan's Wrath is the symbol of our will. Let them see it. Let them fear it." The screen went dark. Jack stood still for a moment, alone with his thoughts. Then he returned to the command deck. "Prepare a scan of the planet," he ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Below them, Helion 9 spun slowly, its surface lined with green forests, wide crystal plains, and glowing cities. It didn't look like a battleground, but Jack knew better. He had learned never to trust a quiet planet. Far below, on the planet's surface, in a towering crystalline chamber, leaders of the alien alliance had gathered. 12 species, each different in form and voice, sat in a circle. At the center stood Varric, leader of the Zirathi, tall and sharp-eyed. "They've arrived," he said quietly. "Earth's monster, the Titan's Wrath." A low murmur spread through the hall. Some leaders shouted for war, others urged caution, but Varric raised a hand. "Before we act, we must see the truth. Scan their ship, now." A moment later, the room fell into silence. The scan results came through on a tall light screen. The ship's energy signature was like nothing they had seen. At its core, a dark matter weapon pulsed, unstable, unnatural, capable of shattering entire worlds. One of the leaders gasped. Another whispered, "We're already dead." Varric stared at the screen, unmoving. His voice was quiet, but every word was clear. "They didn't come to talk. They came to end us." Above, aboard the Titan's Wrath, Jack Voss stared out at Helion 9. He didn't know yet what the aliens had seen. He didn't know that below, fear was spreading like wildfire, but he could feel it in his bones. Something was coming. The scan results spread quickly across Helion 9 like a shockwave. In the crystalline council hall, fear turned to anger. The dark matter core inside the Titan's Wrath wasn't just a weapon, it was a warning, a message written in energy and death. Earth had not come to negotiate. It had come to show dominance. Varric stood tall in the center of the chamber. His cloak of silver threads hung still, but his eyes burned with movement. Around him, alien voices rose, loud, sharp, frightened. "This is madness," shouted a Jorellan counselor. His skin shifted colors with emotion. "We must strike now. If we wait, they will wipe us from the stars." "No," countered a smaller being, the ambassador of the Lithari. "We cannot match that weapon. Attacking would mean suicide." "They've already attacked," another growled. "They just haven't pulled the trigger yet." Varric lifted one long arm, and the room fell silent. Fear leads to rash action, but so does pride. We must think. He turned to the scan results, the dark core rotating on the screen. This is their message: submit or be destroyed. If we respond with force, we give them the excuse they want. If we do nothing, we are already lost. He paused, then added, there may be another way. Let me reach out to their captain. One man may be reasoned with. A fleet cannot. There were murmurs of disagreement, but no one stopped him. High above, aboard the Titan's Wrath, Captain Jack Voss sat in the briefing chamber, reviewing the surface scans. His mind wasn't on minerals or terrain. It was on the conversation he'd had with Earth Command, and what hadn't been said. They wanted a show of force, but they knew what kind of message this ship sent. The dark matter core wasn't just dangerous. It was feared, unstable, barely understood, but powerful enough to vaporize a moon. He turned to Commander Elena Hargrove. Any unusual movement on the planet? No weapons raised, sir, she said. But we intercepted encrypted signals. Heavy communication traffic among alien council members. They know what we're carrying. Jack leaned back in his chair. Then they're scared. Elena nodded. Yes, sir. There was a pause. You don't sound happy about it, he said quietly. She met his gaze. I'm not sure fear builds peace. Jack didn't answer. He didn't need to. He knew what she meant. Just then, a soft tone rang out on the control panel. A coded signal had been received. Non-hostile. Unknown origin. High-level encryption. Elena frowned. It's a direct message. Not from their fleet. It's from the surface. Addressed to you. Jack's eyes narrowed. Put it through. The message was simple. A voice, smooth and calm. Captain Jack Voss. My name is Varric of the Sirathi. I am the voice of the alien council below. I wish to speak off record. Off script. You have the power to burn us. I ask only that you hear us first. No threats. Just words. There was no demand. No insult. Just a request. Jack leaned forward, listening to the silence that followed. He stood and paced the room, deep in thought. His training said to ignore it. Earth Command would say it was a distraction. But something in the voice, calm, intelligent, not afraid, stuck with him. Have our communications team verify the signal, Jack said. If it's clean, prepare a private reply. I'll speak to him. Elena blinked. You sure about that, sir? No, Jack said. But I want to hear what he has to say. Down on Helion 9, Varric stood by the communication terminal in the council tower, waiting. Behind him, the other leaders had resumed their argument, split between fear and fury. But Varric stood still, focused, listening to the quiet. Then the terminal blinked green. Message received. Meeting accepted. Coordinates set. Varric closed his eyes for a moment. It was a small crack in a solid wall, but cracks grow. High above, Earth Command received Jack's report. Minutes later, in their cold steel chambers on Earth, admirals read the message with tight jaws and narrowed eyes. He's engaging with them, one said. Yes, said another. We may need to remind Captain Voss who he serves. The threat wasn't spoken aloud, but it didn't have to be. The meeting place was neutral territory, an old mining station floating between Helion 9 and its shattered moon. Once used by prospectors from the Andari system, the station was long abandoned. Its metal corridors echoed with the sounds of nothing. Dust floated in the zero-gravity halls. Lights flickered faintly, powered by backup cells that still hadn't failed after 20 years. Captain Jack Voss arrived first. His shuttle docked silently. He stepped out, dressed in full uniform, but without weapons. Protocol demanded armor and a guard, but he had chosen otherwise. If this was to be a meeting of words, he would not show up ready to kill. Not this time. He walked through the cold corridor slowly, hearing the hum of the station's weak power. He passed by shattered glass, old mining gear, and graffiti written in languages he couldn't read. He reached the chamber at the center, once a control room, now a quiet place lit by a single overhead light. Varric was already there, tall, slim, and dressed in smooth silver robes. Varric stood calmly by the window that looked out into space. His skin shimmered faintly under the dim light, and his dark eyes were sharp and steady. Captain Voss, he said, turning without fear. You came. Jack nodded. You asked. They stood in silence for a few seconds, both measuring the other. "I expected more weapons," Varric said. "I expected more guards," Jack replied. A faint smile touched Varric's lips. "Then we both chose wisely." Jack walked closer. "Let's not waste time." "Why call me here?" Varric turned to face him fully. "Because the galaxy is watching your ship, and we are afraid. We've seen weapons before. We've fought wars, but what you've brought to our doorstep is not a weapon. It's a message." Jack crossed his arms. "The message is simple. Earth is done negotiating through weakness. Then we were right to fear it." Varric said calmly, "Your dark matter core, it could erase a world in seconds. No one here can match that kind of power." Jack's voice stayed even. "It's a deterrent. We don't want war, but we won't run from one either." Varric walked slowly around the room, his voice low and controlled. "I've seen what deterrents become. I've watched fleets turn peaceful skies into ash, because someone thought fear kept peace. But fear doesn't create peace. It creates silence, and silence breaks." Jack didn't reply at first. He watched the stars outside the window. Then he asked, "So what do you want, Varric? A treaty? A plea for mercy?" "No," Varric said simply. "I want understanding. A chance to speak before blood is spilled. Because once your weapon is fired, we won't back down. We'll fight, even if it ends us." Jack looked at him, eyes steady. "And if Earth sees this talk as betrayal," he asked, "what if they pull me from command? What if they fire without asking me?" Varric didn't blink. "Then let them. But at least you'll know you tried. At least someone on your side wanted more than submission." Jack turned away. The silence in the room pressed down on him. For the first time in a long while, he felt the weight of command not as pride, but as burden. "You're not wrong," he said quietly, "but I don't know if that's enough." Varric stepped closer, voice soft now. "Maybe not, but sometimes one voice is the difference between fire and forgiveness." The meeting ended there. They didn't shake hands, they didn't sign anything, but something passed between them. A recognition, a quiet line drawn in the dark. Jack returned to the Titan's wrath without incident. No ambush, no trap. Commander Elena Hargrove met him at the dock. "Well?" she asked. Jack looked tired, older somehow. "He's not what I expected." She raised an eyebrow. "Enemy or ally?" Jack didn't answer right away. "I don't know yet, but he doesn't want war. That much I believe." He walked past her toward the bridge, but Earth Command had already received news of the meeting. Their response was cold and immediate. "You are a soldier, Captain Voss, not a diplomat. Delay any further talks. Be ready to act." Jack stared at the message on his screen. His hand hovered over the reply key. Outside the window, Helion 9 spun quietly, peaceful, still untouched. But peace never stayed long when warships waited overhead. The mood aboard the Titan's wrath had changed. The silence that once meant discipline now carried weight. Heavy, unspoken thoughts passed between the crew like shadows. Eyes lingered longer on monitors. Conversations grew shorter. Everyone could feel it. Something was coming. Captain Jack Voss stood at the center of the bridge, staring at the large display screen. Helion 9 floated below, peaceful in appearance, but tense beneath the surface. He had not heard from Varric since their meeting. The silence worried him. Commander Elena Hargrove entered the bridge with a sealed datapad in hand. "Message from Earth Command," she said quietly. Jack took it. The screen opened with a single line of orders. "Initiate final weapon calibration. Prepare to fire within 24 hours. Any further delay will be considered disobedience." Jack read the words twice. He had expected them, but not so soon. He lowered the pad slowly. "They've made their decision," he said. Elena didn't speak. She looked at him, her expression calm but uncertain. "Run the calibration checks," he ordered finally. "But hold off on charging the core until I give the word." "Yes, sir," she said, then hesitated. "Permission to speak freely." Jack nodded. "We don't need to do this," she said. "There's still a chance. Maybe not a big one, but I know," he interrupted gently. "But Earth doesn't want a chance. They want control." She didn't respond. She just turned and walked away. On Helion 9, the council chamber was no longer filled with argument. It was filled with decisions. The alien leaders had seen the warship's power. They had heard Varek's report from the meeting, and now they prepared. Armies were called, defense shields were activated, deep shelters opened for civilians. The time for debate was over. Varek stood at the center of the room, watching it all unfold. He had done what he could. He had spoken with the human captain. He had pleaded for logic, for understanding, but silence followed. One of the Lithari commanders approached him. Her voice was quiet. "Should we strike first?" Varek shook his head. "No, not yet. He's still thinking." She looked doubtful. "He doesn't have time." "Neither do we," he admitted. "But we give him every second we can." Back on the warship, the dark matter core chamber glowed faintly. Engineers moved around it in silence, checking instruments and adjusting safety seals. The core pulsed, alive and dangerous. It wasn't fully active yet, but it was close. In the observation room above, Jack Voss watched it. He had seen it tested once, not on a planet, but on an asteroid the size of a city. The blast had ripped it apart in less than 2 seconds, leaving nothing but dust and floating shards. He had not forgotten that sight. A voice spoke behind him. "You don't want to fire it, do you?" It was Lieutenant Oren, one of his junior officers, young, sharp, and observant. Jack didn't turn. "No, I don't." "Then why are we still preparing?" "Because Earth gave the order." Oren stepped beside him. "But you're the one holding the trigger." Jack looked at the young officer. He saw no rebellion in Oren's eyes, just honesty. "Yes," Jack said quietly. "I am." Time passed. Hours ticked by. The core was ready. The weapons were armed. One final command was all that remained. Jack sat in his quarters, staring at the console. The command code blinked at the center of the screen. One key, one moment, one choice. He thought of the lives on the surface. Alien or not, they were people. Families, scientists, children, fighters, yes, but also farmers and builders. He had seen their cities during scans. They weren't preparing for invasion. They were preparing to survive. He closed his eyes. Then his screen lit up again. Another message. This one unencrypted, raw and simple, from Varek. "We do not wish to die today, but we will if we must. The choice is no longer just yours. It is the future's." Jack stared at the message. Then he stood, and he walked, not to the weapons console, but to the comms room. On Helion 9, the warning sirens had begun. Children were moved underground. Ships lifted into the sky. Ipetufats, one presentus. Soldiers stood in formation. Everyone waited for the blast from above, but it didn't come. Instead, a message echoed through every channel. A calm human voice, clear, strong, and unexpected. "This is Captain Jack Voss of the Titan's Wrath. I have received orders to fire. I will not follow them. There is still another path. I am asking for peace, not weakness, not surrender, just peace." The voice ended. Silence returned. But this silence was different. This silence held breath. The bridge of the Titan's Wrath had never been so quiet. No beeping of instruments, no chatter between crew, no orders spoken aloud, just silence, and the low hum of the dark matter core deep below. Captain Jack Voss stood in front of the main console. The final command code still blinked on the screen, waiting to be confirmed. One press, and the weapon would charge fully. One press, and Helion 9's surface would vanish. He didn't press it. Instead, his voice had already echoed across every open channel, reaching the planet below and all nearby ships. "I will not follow the order." His declaration had stunned everyone. His crew, Earth Command, and even Varek. Now Jack stood waiting for the fallout. Commander Elena Hargrove stepped up beside him, her face unreadable. "Sir," she said quietly, "Earth Command is responding." "Put them through," he replied. The main screen lit up. The face of Admiral Roth appeared. Hard eyes, sharp jaw, no hint of emotion. "Captain Voss," the Admiral said slowly, "you are relieved of command. Stand down immediately. Transfer control of the Titan's Wrath to your executive officer, and return to Earth for inquiry." Jack didn't flinch. "Sir, I made a decision to prevent mass death. This action, you disobeyed a direct order. Roth cut in, his voice cold. You compromised Earth's strategic hold. You will answer for this. Do not speak again. Turn over control now. Elena looked at Jack, unsure. Jack didn't move. Instead, he said, "Admiral, with all due respect, if Earth's strength requires the death of billions to prove itself, then we are no longer protectors. We are tyrants." The Admiral's face didn't change. "You just started something you can't control." The screen went black. Jack took a breath. Slowly he turned to his crew. Some stared at him in shock. Others looked away. A few nodded. None moved against him. "Stand down weapons," he said clearly. "Power down the core. Notify engineering." Elena gave a small nod and began relaying orders. On Helion 9, the message was received in real time. In bunkers and towers, in meeting halls and military outposts, the words were repeated. "I will not follow the order." Varric sat alone in the upper chamber, listening. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. But he felt a shift in the air. A moment that hadn't existed minutes before, a path that hadn't been open. Now waiting. He activated the main console. "Open fleet-wide broadcast," he said to his aide. Then he spoke. "This is Varric. The human captain has refused to fire. He has risked everything to give us time. Do not waste it. Hold your fire. Let no one move. We will answer this choice, not with missiles, but with reason." The message flew across the sky, across languages and species. All over Helion 9, weapons were lowered. No one relaxed, but no one fired. Not yet. Back on the Titan's Wrath, the atmosphere was tense. Engineers confirmed the dark matter core was offline. Power levels dropped. The ship was no longer ready to strike. It was vulnerable. Jack sat alone in his quarters now, stripped of command but still aboard. Earth Command hadn't responded again, but the silence felt louder than any order. He stared at the small screen on his desk. A new message waited. From Varric. "You made a choice that most fear. You held back the fire. You held up your voice. Whether peace comes now or later, know this: you changed the path." Jack read the message twice. Then he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He didn't know what would happen next. But he knew what hadn't happened. No cities had burned. No families had turned to ash. No war had started. Yet, and maybe that was enough for now. In the depths of space, Earth Command debated behind closed doors. Some demanded punishment. Others questioned the mission. News had leaked. Across Earth and its colonies, people asked questions. Why didn't he fire? Why did he stand down? What did he see that others didn't? There were no simple answers. Only a moment, a choice, that had echoed louder than any weapon. And on Helion 9, a meeting was being arranged. Alien leaders gathered again. This time not for war but for talks. For the first time in a long while, hope entered the room. 3 days had passed since the order was refused. 3 days since the galaxy expected a war that never came. Above Helion 9, the Titan's Wrath remained in orbit, power lowered, weapons cold. It no longer looked like a threat. It looked like a choice made visible. Captain Jack Voss, no longer in command, spent those days under light security aboard his own ship. Earth Command had not yet ordered his arrest, but the silence from headquarters was clear. He had crossed a line. Still, he remained calm. He sat in his quarters, watching reports stream in from across the system. Civilian transports had returned to the skies. Alien fleets were pulling back. Energy scans showed shields being lowered on the surface. The war that should have begun was unraveling before it ever started. A soft knock came at his door. It slid open, revealing Commander Elena Hargrove. "You should see this," she said. Jack followed her down to the main briefing room, where a wide screen displayed a council chamber on Helion 9. It was the same hall he'd seen in the intelligence files. Crystal walls, long light panels, and a dozen alien leaders seated in a wide circle. At the center stood Varric. "This is a live broadcast," Elena said quietly. "They're opening peace talks." Officially, Jack said nothing. He watched. Varric's voice filled the room through the speakers. "We stand here not as enemies," he said, "but as survivors of our own fears. The weapon that hung above us could have ended everything. Instead, it gave us this moment, this chance. We will not waste it." There was no applause, no celebration, just quiet agreement, heads nodding, eyes meeting. Diplomacy was beginning, fragile, uncertain, but real. Elena looked at Jack. "This happened because of you." He shook his head. "No, it happened because Varric chose not to fire too." "We both did." She smiled faintly. "That may be true, but you fired the first silence." Later that evening, a shuttle arrived from Helion 9. A formal request had been made by the Alien Council. Captain Jack Voss was invited to the surface, not as an officer of war, but as a guest of peace. He was given clearance. No one on Earth had forbidden it. Perhaps they didn't want to be the ones to say no out loud. He boarded the shuttle alone. As the small craft descended through Helion 9's upper atmosphere, Jack looked down at the world he had nearly destroyed. Forests stretched in every direction. Cities glittered like scattered stars. From up close it looked alive. Not dangerous, not alien, just alive. He landed on a smooth platform surrounded by towering crystal spires. Varric was waiting. They met at the edge of the platform. No guards, no weapons. "Captain Voss," Varric said. "Welcome to Helion 9. "Thank you," Jack replied. They walked side by side into the council building. As they moved through halls of glass and stone, beings of many species watched them pass, not with fear, but with curiosity, and something close to respect. Inside the council chamber, Jack stood before the group he had once been ordered to threaten. "I don't speak for Earth anymore," he said, "but I'll answer any question you ask." One of the council members leaned forward. "Why didn't you fire?" Jack looked around the room. "Because I saw what I was becoming. I saw what Earth was becoming, and I couldn't be that man. Not again." Another council member asked, "Will Earth send someone else? Another ship? Another captain?" "I don't know," Jack admitted. "But if they do, I hope they hear what you're willing to offer, before they give another order." There were no more questions, just a long silence, and then Varric spoke. "You made a choice. Now we must make one too. We choose peace." Days later, news spread across human colonies. Earth was sending envoys, not warships, to Helion 9. The decision had been debated, argued, and protested. But in the end, Earth's leaders saw the truth. The galaxy had changed in 3 days, and they could not undo that change. Jack Voss did not return to command. He didn't ask for it. He stayed on Helion 9 for some time, helping build the first peace platform between Earth and the Alliance. His name was spoken quietly in the halls of power, sometimes as a hero, sometimes as a traitor, but always with weight. He had made a choice when it mattered, and in that moment, he hadn't thought about legacy or history. Only lives, only peace. One morning, as he stood on a high balcony, looking out over Helion 9's plains, Elena's voice reached him through a secure comlink. "They've assigned me to a new ship," she said. "You?" Jack smiled. "I'm staying planetside," he said. "For now. There's more to fix here than I ever fixed in space." She laughed softly. "You always were more grounded than you looked." They said goodbye, and for a long while, Jack simply stood there, watching the wind move across a world that still existed, because he had chosen not to destroy it.